I had just quit my job at the casino and hated my new job. It didn't pay like it was supposed to, and my boss was a condescending jerk. My roommate of 4 years and I had a falling out. I was crashing in my cousin's room. I couldn't find an affordable place. So when my mum called and said that she was having surgery and really needed me to come and manage her shop while she recovered, I jumped on the chance to get out of the city and out in the forests of Oregon coast. I didn't have a ton of money, but I figured my savings and a little help from my mama would get me there. However, every 10-inch U-Haul in the city was reserved or rented. I had to take a 14-footer, which was much more expensive. Suddenly, the money situation was looking grim. So when an old friend from high school in Oregon called me if he could crash on our couch for 2 weeks to check out New Orleans in exchange for paying for gas, food and hotels for part of the trip, I was super relieved. He wanted to be dropped off at his extended family's place in Texas, southwest of Dallas. He could help me drive too. I quickly agreed. He purchased his plane ticket to come down. I called my best friend Katie in Oregon, telling her I was coming, and told her how Dan was going to help me to Texas. The three of us and his long-term girlfriend had been really close, so I expected her to be excited. Instead, I was met with long seconds of silence before she asked me if I knew about his accident. I didn't. A few years before, Dan had wrecked his bike while not wearing a helmet. He was in a coma for several months. Katie told me that when he woke up, he was a different person. She said none of our group would have anything to do with him anymore, but wouldn't really elaborate further. She would only repeat that he was just different. I felt a little nervous after this conversation, but the plane ticket was already bought. Disclaimer: when I knew him before, Dan was hands down one of the best people I've ever met. He was genuine, generous, and truly cared about everyone. You could trust him with anything. I realised that the way he acted later was at least partially the result of trauma, and I will try to be respectful of this. However, many things he did catapulted over the line of decency. I admit that I could have handled this much better, but to be honest, I had a lot of trouble finding and understanding as his inappropriate behaviour escalated. Once he arrived, my cousin and I noticed that he was always slightly out of it and had no filter. Okay, we can deal with that. Then he says he forgot to transfer his money from his savings to his checking and his bank was giving him trouble about transferring it over the phone. He assured me he would get it straight before we left. Now, he's the guy on the couch whom I am responsible for feeding and covering bar tabs for. I had plans for goodbye blowouts with friends, and my aunt didn't want him there if I was out. I wasn't missing the chance to see all my people one last time, so I was stuck with him. He promised he'd pay me back. Then he started getting more and more handsy with my cousin Natalie and I. We made it very clear this was unwanted and inappropriate. He would walk into our room unannounced, especially at times we were getting ready and likely to be undressed. We actually had to install a lock because he ignored every demand that he knock and wait for a response. He would stroke our feet as he walked by while we were laid out relaxing on the bed, stand so close we could feel him breathe, touch us every time we walked by, rub on our shoulders and touch our hair. By the time I caught him smelling my hair and secretly taking pictures of our behinds while we were walking, I was officially creeped the hell out and working towards furious. I was about to be alone with him in a hotel miles from anyone I knew. I grew increasingly stronger in my reactions to what he was doing, trying to discourage him from his behaviours. He would apologise, then rinse and repeat. 2 weeks later, we were on our way, crossing a bridge right before Shreveport. He reached over and slid his hand across my upper thigh. He went for the money and his fingers were brushing my lady parts. I swerved, smacked his hand away and promptly began ripping him a new butthole. Suddenly, the inside of the U-Haul was filled with flashing red and blue lights. Images of everything I owned being impounded filled my head. Luckily, the officer caught the byplay between us and let me go without a ticket. He cast a significant glance at Dan, who was acting like a total weirdo, wandering around talking to either us or himself, who knows, and simply told me, "Good luck." Yeah, thanks Shreveport cop. I appreciate your understanding. Once we got to Shreveport, I stopped for gas. Dan claimed that he had the money in his account now, so I asked him for it. He started freaking out, saying he'd lost his wallet. Funny, I hadn't seen him pull it out once in over 2 weeks, so not sure how he lost it. But I pay for the gas. As I'm climbing back into the truck, now I'm 4'11", so I really had to boost myself up because I started to slip. From the odd vantage point this put me in, I could see the top of his wallet crammed in the space between the tall dashboard and the side window. I didn't believe him when he told me he hadn't put it there on purpose. It was wedged in too firmly for all that nonsense. Back on the road, I'm a very introverted person and treasure calm moments. Dan talked and talked and talked for hours about ridiculousness, mainly how great he was in so many ways, and kept trying, horribly I might add, to seduce me. I was completely over him. Twice I almost kicked him out, but kept reminding myself that he had suffered severe head trauma, and I couldn't leave him alone in the middle of nowhere with no money and still call myself a good person. It became my mantra. At the next gas station, he admitted that his family had never put money into his account. I was now seriously worried that I was going to run out of money before I could even get to Oregon. I'd been worried about that before I had even started supporting a grown man for the last several weeks. Now, I was approaching frantic. When we stopped to sleep at a hotel, I could only afford 1 room, but made sure that there were 2 beds. As I'm laying down, trying not to lose my temper, he gets in the shower. A long shower. But I'm okay with that. At least he's out of my space for a bit. Hopefully he'll whack it and stop harassing me for booty. That was my thought at the time. Suddenly, the bathroom door, which was a few feet from the side of my bed, flew open. A great cloud of steam billowed out. I have never witnessed so much steam after a shower. I'm still thinking, what the F? When the steam clears enough for me to see him, he's standing right inside the bathroom door, hands on hips, completely naked. I start stammering, asking what the F he's doing. Get dressed. He just struts out naked and starts doing a gyrating dance, causing his, you-know-what, to jump and twirl. Pulling the blankets up protectively and calling my dog to me, I started to feel real fear of this man, whom had once been my best friend. Once he saw his strip show was not having the desired effect on me, his whole countenance changed. His expression darkened. I saw open anger on his face. He starts screaming and ranting about how great he is and how hard he's been trying to show me, but I just don't get it. He's a wonderful man, a perfect man, with a perfect, well, you know what, right here awaiting my pleasure, and I'm insisting on being a blind, ignorant bitch. He continues calling me names while simultaneously trying to convince me I'm stupid for not being with him while I have the chance. He was naked the whole time he was yelling. Thinking back on it, I believe he took such a hot shower to make it look bigger, which really does crack me up. People are so strange. It took forever to get him calmed down and dressed. I was trying not to show how scared I was. The reality of my situation hit me hard. I was alone in a hotel room, far from everyone I knew, with a mentally unstable man. One who felt I somehow owed it to him, or myself, to sleep with him. I already knew he had no boundaries. I lay there holding my dog all night, listening to every rustle coming from his side of the room. I was terrified that if I fell asleep, that I would wake up to him trying to assault me. Thank goodness for my pit bull. I'm sure she was a major deterrent. I didn't sleep a wink, and my dog, catching the mood, wouldn't even leave my side to eat her dinner or breakfast. The reasons I didn't leave him there the next morning were 1, he would be gone before I had to get another room, and 2, he promised his family would give me some cash when we got there. I needed it desperately, mainly because of him. Last day with him, we're off main interstate and heading south. So I take off on 0 sleep and pure nerves. I wanted to put his drop-off location in my MapQuest itinerary to make it easier for me since I'd never strayed from the main interstate before. However, I was never able to get him to give me the actual address of where I was taking him. He continually assured me that it was easy peasy, no way I could get lost, until I gave up in exasperation. I'm still furious and shaken about the night before, and he immediately got us lost for about an hour and a half. Once we got headed back to the right way, I decided to stop before we hit the main road and let my doggie out for the toilet. We stopped in a park area with a playground in some tiny town that I didn't pay attention to the name of. I was walking her, having left Dan in the truck with the air on. These 7 guys are walking by adjacent to the park. When they see me, they all stop, talk a second, and almost as one, give me the same creepy grins. They turn off the street and walk across the park to the playground area, a few hundred feet in front of me. They lean on the equipment in a loose horseshoe centered on me, still smiling. They didn't say anything or signal to me, occasionally only speaking to each other lowly. They were all dressed the same, ranged from early teens to early 30s, and just generally gave off bad vibes. They were staring me down until I felt like a rabbit that had seen a fox. Callie, my dog, who almost loves everyone, started trying to drag me back to the truck in the opposite direction of these guys. I trusted her and followed, trying to act calm and confident, but I felt neither. When I got back up to the U-Haul, Dan had the back open. I tried to tell him to close it, we need to go now, but he was oblivious to all of my distress signals. He kept insisting that we try and feed the dog, since she didn't eat her last 2 meals. Okay, feed her in the truck. We have to go. A quick side glance showed the men were still by the playground staring. But now, they weren't leaning on the equipment. They were standing close together, talking and watching us. This is when Fantastic Dan informs me that he had lost the keys. What the? Really? I have a sinking feeling in my stomach and demand we search right now, quickly. As I scour the ground, I see the men have separated. 2 are in the same place. 2 are circling wide to the right. 2 doing the same on the left. They are all still staring at us, and I've lost track of one. I finally spot him. He must have started circling to the left before the other 2, because he was now almost directly behind the U-Haul. Maybe 100 feet back. He was hidden from my sight where I'd been searching. I was officially losing my grip on myself. Full fight or flight mode was taking over. I knew I'd searched every inch of space Dan could have possibly been around, several times, even running my hands across the ground just in case. These guys were circling us, and we couldn't get away. Our phones were locked in the cab. For a minute, time seemed to slow down, and I just stared off, thinking how totally screwed we were. I think all the stress may have overloaded my system for a moment. My eyes strayed to the bag of dog food. The whole reason Dan had gotten out of the cab in the first place. No way. Not possible. But maybe. Time snapped back into regular focus and I practically dove for the dog food bag. Cursing and threatening Dan the whole time, like a maniac, I yanked it up and dumped it all over the back of the U-Haul. And there they were, the keys, shining silver in the wave of brown dog kibbles. I could have killed Dan in that moment, twice. But I just slammed and locked the bag and got us the hell out of there. The rest of the trip to where I dropped him off is a blur. I know he got us lost again for about 2 hours this time. I used that time to scream at him. Admittedly, not my best moment. Eventually, he had me drop him off at some random main street in a little town that looked like all the others. He didn't even tell me it was his destination until he had me pull over. I was angry that he wouldn't take me to his family's to at least get some money for taking care of him, giving him a place to stay, and driving him so far. We had a truly marvelous fight, but I eventually gave up. I was just happy to be rid of him. I was exhausted, but too overstimulated to sleep. So I decided to try and get a few more hours in to make up for lost time and get back into familiar territory. I was driving a lonely stretch of highway through central Texas when I realized I hadn't seen a town or exit for a very long time, and my giant U-Haul was really low on gas. Just when I'm starting to freak out and seriously run out of gas, I see a small town coming up. I pull into this town and it is tiny. I was so worried about other things that I never did pay attention to the name of the town. But there were only about 6 streets in the whole place. I go gas up and am ready to get back on the road. Except I cannot for the life of me find my way back to the highway. I circle the town about 4 times and start getting so frustrated because this is such a tiny town. How the hell can I not find my way out? I can literally see the highway, but can't get to it. I return to the gas station to ask for directions. Now, when I got gas, I paid at the pump and never went in. When I enter for directions, there's a skinny, nondescript guy. He's got black hair hanging in front of his eyes, and to be honest, it looked like it needed a good wash. He's not particularly creepy, but a little rude. He never really met my eyes. He was looking down at a magazine. He gives me directions that don't sound right at all. And he's telling me to take a road that will get me to the highway in about 17 miles. So for a moment, I'm dumbfounded. Then I point out that I didn't drive that far to get from the highway into town. Why so far to get back to the highway? I can literally see it from the town. He's so casual, almost like I'm just an annoyance and can follow his directions or not. Why should he care? He gives me some explanation about the road curving around. That doesn't really make sense. He still doesn't look at me. Just whatever. I gave you your directions, waved his hand in the direction of the door. When I got into the parking lot, my whole body started trembling violently, and my heart started racing, seemingly for no reason. I get into the truck, and as soon as I put the key in the ignition, I burst into tears. I had the most terrible feeling that no matter how nonchalant he acted, this man had very bad intentions. I didn't know what, but I knew right then and there that there was no way I was going to follow his directions. Yet this was the only store in this little town, and short of knocking on doors, no thank you, there was no one else to ask for directions. I decided I didn't give a shit if this town seemed like something dropped out of the Twilight Zone. I was going to drive around until I found my own way out, even if it took all damn night. Then, a big red beater of a pickup truck, as much rust as metal, pulls up and disgorged the quintessential Texan man, huge, husky, and in flannel and work boots. Without even thinking about it, I jumped out of the truck and approached him quickly, yet warily. Looking into his eyes, I saw a kind human being, or at least I was hoping I did. I asked him if he could please give me directions to the highway. I told him I knew it was silly, but I just couldn't seem to find my way back. He looked concerned as I was visibly upset, so he made me laugh and very cheerfully gave me directions for a hairpin curve turnoff, right at the end of a small concrete tunnel that I'd passed several times. He said it often confuses travellers because it was so hard to see. They need to put up signs. With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I asked him how far in miles was it back to the highway. He laughed and gave me a funny look. Miles? Miss, I'd say it's a quarter mile at most. You can see the highway right from here. At this point, I couldn't help it. I had to know. And then I gave him the directions the man in the store had given me. Texas looks at me very intently and asked me how I knew about that route. It was pretty far out, and usually only locals know about it, so I told him. He was quiet for a few minutes and then asked what the attendant looked like and if I had a map of the state. Nope, just my MapQuest, which was not helpful in this situation. He goes to his truck and grabs a raggedy local map from his glove box. Spreading it out for me, he traces the route I described. The way the man from the gas station had told me to go led away from town, away from the interstate, and led to seemingly the middle of nowhere. Texas told me that the road did go about 17 miles, right before it dead-ended in the desert. I asked him what was out there, and he told me that it was nothing but some junked cars and a few trailers and mobile homes, all owned by the same family. This family was known locally as troublemakers, meth heads, and alcoholics, and these were the nice things townspeople had to say about them. And the erstwhile clerk was part of this family and lived down that road. I'll never forget the look in Texas's eyes as he told me this. He also told me that I was smart to listen to my instincts, and he told me to be careful travelling out there. I don't know if the man from the gas station wanted what was in the back of my U-Haul or what was in the driver's seat, but thankfully, I didn't have to find out. Oh, and I learned that sometimes angels look like ruddy-haired Texans with scruffy faces and rusty pickups. Thank you, random Texan stranger. You really saved my ass, and I will always remember you with tons of love. Sorry I didn't ask your name. You're forever Texas to me now.